My ex-wife had been gone almost a year. Before I understood, she had never really left. I estimate heating and cooling systems for a living. Fort Wayne, mostly commercial. What that means is I run load calculations all day. I notice when the math is off, a room that won't hold temperature, a bill too high for the square footage. I am, by trade, a man who finds the leak. So it bothered me on a level I couldn't name. Renee always knew things. We'd been divorced about 10 months. It wasn't ugly on paper, but she'd call or she'd text, and she'd reference things she had no way of knowing. That I'd had the Andersons over for dinner, that I was thinking about selling the boat. Once she mentioned, offhand, a doctor's appointment I had told exactly one person about, in my own kitchen, on the phone. I did what most people do. I made it make sense. Mutual friends. A lucky guess. My mother, God love her, cannot keep a secret. I built an explanation for each one, and I moved on. Because the alternative was a kind of crazy I wasn't ready to be. And I had a reason to resist it that went past pride. If I admitted she was watching, I had to admit I'd been living inside it, that I'd undressed in that hallway, made private calls in that kitchen, cried once on that couch after the papers were final, thinking I was alone. A man can take a lot of bad news. The news that your worst private moments had an audience is a different kind of weight. I should say I'm a Hoosier through and through, practical to a fault. My whole life is about not overreacting. You don't tear out a furnace because one room feels cold. You find the cause. So I kept looking for the cause. That wasn't her. Here's one I rebuilt at least 5 times. I'd started seeing someone new. Nothing serious, a few dinners, and I kept it quiet out of plain decency. Then Renee texted out of nowhere and asked how the redhead was. The woman I was seeing has red hair. I told myself my buddy Dave must have let it slip. Dave didn't know either. I added it to the pile of things I'd explain later, and I went to bed in a house I still thought was mine. The thing that finally broke, it was dumb. It was a phone charger. There was a charging block plugged into the outlet behind my living room TV. White square, a USB port on the front. I assumed it was mine. You've got a drawer full of them, right? You don't audit your chargers. But I was fishing an HDMI cable out of there one Sunday, and I actually looked at it, and the math was off. It was heavier than it should be. There was a pinhole on the face of it that a charger has no reason to have, and it was plugged in, drawing power with nothing connected to it. I'm going to be honest. I held that thing in my hand for a long minute, and I did not want to know. There is a version of that Sunday where I put it back and kept my life simple. I think about that version sometimes. Instead, I drove it to a guy I know. He does security installs for some of my commercial accounts. He took one look and got quiet. He plugged it into a laptop in a way that didn't connect it to anything live. Then he showed me. It was a camera. It recorded to a tiny card and pushed clips over the Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi. The network password she had set up when we bought the house. The one I had never once thought to change. He found a second one in the smoke detector in the hallway. That was the part that took the floor out from under me. The living room I could almost explain away. The hallway is right outside my bedroom. The security guy, to his credit, didn't try to comfort me. He said, "Man, you need to take this to the police today, and you need to not touch your phone until somebody checks it." He was right about the phone. There was software on it. The kind that lets someone read your texts, hear your calls, watch your location move across a little map. It had been on there since before the divorce. She had set it up while we were still married, while we were still, as far as I knew, trying. I want to tell you, the police kicked her door in. That is not what happened. I gave them everything. The cameras, and evidence bags, the phone, the report from the security guy, dates, the whole timeline. A detective took it seriously. He took it all in. And he was honest with me in a way I didn't want but have come to respect. He said the evidence was strong, but he said these cases are hard, that proving who placed a camera is not the same as proving it's there, and that the prosecutor might not file. They didn't file. I'm not going to dress that up. What I got was a protective order, a piece of paper that says she can be charged if she comes near me or the house again. A piece of paper. So here's where I've landed. And it's not a clean ending. I swept the whole house. I changed every password, every lock, the Wi-Fi, the accounts I didn't even remember we shared. I had the security guy do a real sweep with real equipment. Twice. I am about as sure as a person can be that the house is clean, and I still narrate my own kitchen. I catch myself not saying things out loud. I'll think of a plan and not speak it until I'm in the truck. I run my load calcs at work, and I'm certain of the numbers. Then I come home, and I'm certain of nothing. The easiness is the thing I miss most. I used to talk to my dog, out loud, dumb stuff, the way you do when a house is yours. I don't anymore. I stopped seeing the woman I'd been seeing too, and I never gave her a real reason, because the real reason was a sentence I couldn't make my mouth say. Those losses don't show up on any charge sheet. They're just gone. Quiet, the way heat leaves a room when nobody's watching the gauge. The cameras are gone. The proof was real. None of it was enough. What I can't shake is the year. A whole year where I thought I was alone in my own living room, talking to myself, making decisions I thought were private, and the math was off the entire time, and I was the only one in the house who couldn't see it.
I found out how many places he'd been waiting for me all at once. It was a Tuesday. I was in the break room at the clinic, picking at a sad desk salad. My phone made a sound I had never heard it make before. A gray banner slid down from the top of the screen. It said, "AirTag found moving with you." I'm Bridget, by the way, 31. I clean teeth on sedated dogs for a living, so I don't rattle easy. I read the banner twice, then I did the thing you are not supposed to do. I ignored it. I figured it had slipped into my bag at the store. Somebody's lost keys. That is what I told myself on the drive home. But the drive home is when it started to itch. Because Marcus and I had been done for 4 months. Clean, I thought. No screaming. He just kept turning up. The farmer's market, twice. The trailhead off Government Way. Once, the parking lot of a vet conference. That one was 2 hours away in Coeur d'Alene, a thing I had never told him I was going to. There was one before that too. My cousin's wedding, back in June, 3 counties over. He wasn't invited. He was in the parking lot when we left, leaning on his truck. He said he'd been at a buddy's bachelor thing nearby. I introduced him to my aunt. That's the part that makes me sick now. I walked him around like it was sweet. Each time he had a reason. Small world. Funny, running into you. And each time I believed him, because believing him was easier than the other thing. The other thing was sitting in my phone now, in a gray banner, telling me it had been moving with me. Up here in the inland Northwest, half the county thinks Bigfoot is real. The other half sells t-shirts about it. We joke about being watched from the tree line. It's a joke. It stops being a joke when it's a man you used to share a bathroom with. I got home and I did not go inside. I sat in the driveway and followed the little map the phone gave me. It pinged loudest at the back driver's side wheel. I knelt down on the gravel in my scrubs. I ran my hand up into the wheel well, past the cold and the road grime. My fingers touched something smooth, flat, held there with gray tape, the cheap kind, wound around too many times. A small white disc, about the size of a communion wafer. I sat back on the gravel, and I didn't move for a while. I'm not going to pretend I had a brave thought. My first thought was, how long? My second thought was, every place I have been since. The third thought, I don't really want to repeat. Here is the part I still trip over, the part that rewired me a little. I almost felt relieved. I had the thing now. I peeled it off and I thought, okay, it's over. I found it. I'll drop it in the river, and that's that. Except it wasn't that. The disc explained how he found me. It did not explain everything. It didn't explain the night 2 weeks earlier. My motion light had clicked on at 3 a.m. I'd heard the gravel settle outside, soft, like a weight had just lifted off it. It didn't explain my recycling bin sitting a foot from where I leave it. Little things. The kind of thing you talk yourself out of by lunch. And it didn't explain my own head, Because once I held that disc, I started wondering, if there was one, was there a second? I spent that whole night with a flashlight in my mouth, going over the car like he had, under the bumpers, inside the gas door. I felt insane doing it. I did it anyway. So the next morning, I did the thing I should have done at the very start. I called the non-emergency line. Then I called my friend Dana, who does intake at the sheriff's office. Dana listened, and she said 2 words I will never forget. She said, "Bring it." The detective who took my statement was patient about it. She didn't make me feel dramatic. She bagged the disc in a little envelope. She asked me where I usually parked at work. Then she made a phone call. The clinic shares a lot with the tire place. The tire place keeps a camera on its back corner. It points, more or less by accident, at the row where I park. It took them a few days to pull the file. That was the worst part, honestly. Knowing the answer was sitting on a hard drive somewhere and just having to go to work and floss a Labrador and wait. When the detective called me back, her voice had changed. It was careful in a way that made my stomach drop before she said anything. She asked me to come in. The footage was grainy and green and stamped to Thursday, weeks back. You could see my car. At 20 to 6 in the morning, a man crossed the lot. He had a flashlight held in his teeth. You could see him get down flat on his back. Then he slid under the rear end of my car like a mechanic. Unhurried. He was under there almost 2 full minutes. I knew the jacket. I had bought him that jacket. The detective let me sit with it. I asked her to play it again, which she didn't want to do, and I made myself watch the whole thing a second time. The worst part wasn't him under the car. It was after. He stood up. He brushed the gravel off the back of that jacket. He looked around the lot, calm, like a man checking the weather. Then he walked off the way he came. The timestamp said he'd done it 11 minutes before I usually pull in. He knew my shift better than my manager does. The rest happened in a way that felt very slow and very fast at the same time. They traced the tracker's serial number to an online order. The order went to a card. The card was his. He had spent about $60 to know where I was, every minute of every day, and he had used his own debit card to do it. It never once occurred to him that he might be the one who got caught. They arrested him at his job. Stalking. Unlawful installation of a tracking device. They fitted a monitor to his ankle. I think about that more than I should, because now a small device knows where he is at all times, and he doesn't get a say in it. I sold the car. I know that isn't rational. The tracker was gone, the case was closed, the car ran fine. I sold it anyway, at a loss, because I could not stop picturing him on his back underneath it in the dark. What stays with me isn't the fear. It's the math. For 4 months, he knew every place I slept and ate and cried. And in all that time, I never once knew where he was. Not really. He was just a small world. A funny coincidence. A man with a reason. I check my wheel wells now. Every car I have owned since. I do it without thinking. The way you check your pocket for your keys. My hand just goes there on its own. I'd been changing the locks all week. Then I realized he didn't need a key. Let me back up. I'll call myself Noelle. I run the front desk at a dental practice in Macon. That means I am very good at staying calm while something goes wrong right in front of me. Keep that in mind. I do not spook. Dylan and I dated for 8 months. I ended it in the spring. He took it the way you take a diagnosis you refuse to accept. Quietly. And then not quietly at all. The first sign wasn't a sign. It was a text. It said, "That green dress looks good on you. You should wear it more." I had worn a green dress that day. To work. He was not at my work. I had not posted a picture. I sat at my desk and read it maybe 10 times. And I told myself, okay, lucky guess. People own more than one green dress. Then it kept happening. He'd text about the sandwich I had eaten on my lunch break. The fact that I had gotten my hair cut shorter. Once, "You looked tired pulling in last night." I had gotten home around 11. My street has no streetlights on that end. I'm from here, so let me put it in local terms. In Macon, everybody knows everybody. I kept trying to file this under that. He's got a cousin who saw me, somebody from church. There's always somebody. That's the South. But the comments were too exact, too same day. He wasn't hearing about my life. He was watching it. So I changed my locks. I felt a little silly handing the locksmith my card, like I was being dramatic. He must have seen my face because he said, "Gentle, ma'am, you'd be surprised how often I get called for this." For a few days, it went quiet. I let myself exhale. Then I started noticing the house was off. It's hard to explain. The cereal box I knew was half full was emptier. A drawer in the spare room sat open a half-inch. My phone charger, the one I keep by the couch, was on the kitchen counter. And I do not move my chargers. Little wrong notes, the kind you hum past. The one that should have stopped me was the thermostat. I keep it cold. I'm a cold house person, always have been. Twice that week I came home to it set warm. Both times I changed it back and decided I must have bumped it. You can talk yourself out of almost anything, especially when the alternative is that someone has been standing in your hallway, setting your thermostat to a temperature he likes. There was a smell, too. Some evenings. Not strong. Just the ghost of a cologne I knew. In a hallway it had no business being in. I told myself I was importing it from memory. That grief does that. That fear does that. I told my sister, and she said the thing everybody says. "Noelle, you're stressed, you're not sleeping, you're seeing things." And I wanted that to be true so badly that I almost let it be. I bought a video doorbell anyway. I told myself it was for packages. It caught nothing for a week. Cars, a raccoon, the mail, and I remember feeling almost embarrassed, like the empty footage was proof I'd made it all up. I want you to sit with that. The camera that saw nothing made me trust the wrong thing. I'll admit something here, because it's the part nobody warns you about. That week, I almost reached back out to him. When you're that tired and everyone says you're imagining it, the person making you crazy starts to feel like the only one who'd understand. I typed a message twice. Something like, "Are you doing this?" I deleted it both times. I'm grateful for that, in a grim way. Asking him would only have told him the locks were the one thing I'd changed. Here's the part I have to be honest about because I have gone over it 100 times. The doorbell only watches the front. I never thought about the back. The back door opens onto a screened porch. The porch has an old window unit air conditioner. It turns out you can lift that unit out from the outside if you know the house. And he knew the house. He had helped me carry that air conditioner up the steps the summer before. I came home on a Wednesday around 9 at night. Long day. I dropped my keys in the bowl. I went down the hall to my bedroom, flipped the light, and started peeling off the day. I sat on the edge of my bed to take off my shoes. The comforter under my hand was warm. Not sun warm, not laundry warm. Body warm, on a side of the bed I do not sleep on. I have tried to describe the next few seconds to people, and I can't, really. It's like your body knows before your brain agrees to. I went very still, and in that stillness, I heard the closet door breathe, the way a door does right before it opens, when someone behind it shifts their weight. I did not scream. I want to tell you I did something brave. What I actually did was stand up like everything was normal. I said out loud, "I'm gonna grab some water." I walked down the hall at a regular pace. I made it to the front door, and then I ran. I ran to my neighbors. An older man named Ron keeps his porch light on. I beat on his door. I called the police from his kitchen with my hands shaking so hard I dropped the phone twice. They found Dylan in my closet. He had a phone charger, a sleeve of crackers, and a folding knife. And a kind of calm that the officer told me later bothered him more than panic would have. He said he was waiting to talk. He'd been getting in for at least 2 weeks. He had photographs of me asleep. He pleaded out. Stalking. Aggravated burglary. A couple of charges I still can't say without my mouth going dry. He got a multi-year sentence and a restraining order that runs 10 years. I moved. New town, new everything. I sleep with a chair under the bedroom doorknob. I know that won't really stop anyone. I do it anyway. My sister apologized later for the "you're seeing things." I told her not to. She was saying what any reasonable person says, working from what she could see. And that is the whole trick of it. He didn't just get into my house. He got into the gap between what I knew and what I could prove. He lived in that gap for 2 weeks, while everyone who loved me kept telling me it was empty. I don't blame them for that. I blame how easy I was to talk down. That's the part I'm working on now, with somebody whose job is to help me work on it. Learning to treat the small, wrong note as information, not hysteria. The thing I can't put down is the warmth, not the knife, not the closet. It's that for 1 second, before I understood, my hand was resting on the heat of him, and some animal part of me knew, and I almost said his name out loud, into a room I thought was empty, that wasn't. So I'd already moved twice, changed my number twice. Then the envelope showed up at my sister's house. That was the problem. Not the envelope, the address. I had never given him my sister's address. I'd been that careful. I'm a NICU nurse. I work with the smallest, most fragile humans you can imagine, and I am meticulous to a degree that annoys people who love me. I do not leave doors unlocked. I do not hand out where I sleep. And there it was, on her kitchen island in Tacoma. My name in his handwriting. On a town she had moved to after I cut him off. His name was Aaron. We were together 2 years. The end was the kind of slow leak you don't notice. Not until the water is already at your chin. When I finally left, he didn't beg. He went still in a way I should have read as a warning. I read it as relief instead. The letters started about a month later. The first ones came to my apartment. Fine. He'd had that address. They were long. Pages. The handwriting got smaller toward the bottom of each one, like he was trying to push a whole flood through a narrow door. He wanted to talk. He wanted me to understand. He wanted, mostly, for me to come back. And the wanting had a temperature to it that scared me more than anger would have. The early ones I read. I shouldn't have, but I did, standing right at the mailbox. They started gentle. Memories. The trip we took to the coast. By the third or fourth, the thing underneath had shifted. He'd write that he understood I needed space. Then, a line later, he described the coat I had worn to the store that Tuesday. Tender and surveilling in the same breath. That's the combination I still can't explain to people. He thought the watching was love. He thought telling me he was watching was proof of it. So I moved. First time. New apartment. The lease in a way that's hard to trace. 3 weeks of quiet. Then a letter in the new box. I have to slow down for this next part, because it's where I stopped being able to pretend. I had started checking my car. After everything you read these days, you check your car. On the second move, a friend who's a mechanic put it up on a lift for me, just to look. He found a magnetic case tucked above the rear axle. A GPS unit. Cheap. Effective. Still blinking. That is how the letters kept finding me. He wasn't guessing. He was driving to wherever the little dot stopped at night. Once, before the lift, I'd half noticed the same sedan 3 mornings running. Parked down the block, gone by the time I really looked. I'd written it off. You know how it is. Everybody's got a neighbor with a gray car. After the mechanic found the GPS, I understood the sedan had never been parked. It had been waiting. There is a difference, and your body knows it even when your brain refuses to. I went to the police with the GPS, and I'll say this. They were good. They opened a file, they told me to document everything, keep every letter, photograph every envelope, write down every drive-by. So I became an archivist of my own stalking. I have a binder. It is very organized. It is the worst thing I own. Building that binder did something to me I didn't expect. To document a thing, you have to look at it, straight on. Every letter I'd skimmed and shoved in a drawer, I now had to read and date and describe in my own handwriting under his. From that binder, I learned more about how he saw me than I ever did in 2 years of dating him. None of it was love. All of it was ownership. The envelope at my sister's came after the third letter, and I knew, the second I picked it up, that something was different, because it had weight to it. There was a little shape in the corner that slid when I tilted it. I should have waited for the police. I didn't. I opened it over my sister's sink with a butter knife. I shook it gentle. A single brass cartridge fell out and rang against the steel. A live round, 9mm, and a note. Just one line in that small, careful handwriting. He said he hoped I'd think about us before it was too late for both of us. I did not scream and I did not cry. I called the detective on the file. I read it to her word for word while my sister held the back of my shirt like I might fall. That round changed the category of everything. It moved him from a man who wouldn't let go to a man making a threat in writing with a bullet for punctuation. The charge became aggravated stalking. The GPS was its own charge. They had his handwriting, his prints, the purchase history on the tracker. When they arrested him, an officer told me later he wasn't rattled. He told them, almost bored, that paper doesn't stop anybody, that he'd be around. I think he meant it as a threat. I have decided to take it as information. I moved again after that. Third time. I won't tell you where, and the not telling is just a thing I do now. Like locking up at the hospital. My family passes my address through one person. On paper, never typed. We have rules now. We didn't used to be a family with rules. My sister put up cameras after the envelope. Real ones, the kind you can see. She did it without asking me, and when I came over and saw them, I had to go sit in my car for a few minutes. Not because they scared me, because she shouldn't have needed them. He reached a house he'd never set foot in. He turned my careful, meticulous sister into someone who checks a phone app before she lets her kids out in the yard. That ripple is his too. It just doesn't have a charge attached to it. People ask me what the scariest part was. They expect me to say the bullet. It wasn't the bullet. The bullet I can hold. It's evidence now. In a bag. In a building full of people whose whole job is to keep it. The scariest part is the binder. Months of a man I used to fall asleep next to, driving in the dark to a blinking dot, learning the names of towns I'd run to, writing me pages by the light of his dashboard. All that effort, all that patience, pointed at me. I keep the binder in a fireproof box now. I add to it when I have to, and every so often I open it. Not because I want to, but because I never again want to be that woman. The one who talked herself out of the thing her own hands already knew.